You are listening to Overwatch League Network, the podcast with Deadeye on all the latest Overwatch League news and information. The show with Tactical Visor on all of the statistics and analysis. Here are your hosts, Booger and Tanura.
Welcome to Overwatch League Network episode 133, coming to you live tonight on Twitch. I'm going to introduce you first before we get started. I'm going to introduce you to the co host, Anura. Anura, how's your week been going? Oh, for sure, for sure. Before we get started, I'm gonna tell you a funny joke I heard this morning. It goes, "It's the 6th of July. Somebody's going into work with 8 fingers and a heck of a story." Because it's the 4th of July weekend just happened. Uh, but yeah, that's pretty much my weekend. Was 4th of July, sitting around watching fireworks, playing video games, watching Overwatch League. It was we're coming off the summer showdown, so it was a blast. Um, yeah, we'll get all into that. That's our main discussion tonight. It's just the landscape of the summer showdown. But before we go ahead and get into that, we had a little bit of news from some Overwatch League players and former Overwatch League players. The first bit of that coming with Washington Justice ex off tank Ellie Vote has now joined Team Doge, who is a team that's been tearing up contenders lately. We had a couple players just joined the Overwatch League from Team Doge. So this is just kind of like a repopulation. Wasn't it Kevster and Oni God both came from Team Doge? Was there one more? Or just them two? Yeah, just those two. So we had them two join, and now I guess Team Doge is looking to refill their roster, and they signed Vote. And he was never that bad of an off tank. So this is like good to know that this is like the beginning of his road back into the league, maybe. Um, but yeah, it's really great just to see him still playing competitive Overwatch. The rest of Team Doge now is currently he's joining to play alongside Speedily, Hybrid, Salary, AFOX, and OG. So this should be a pretty strong contenders roster. Anura, do you think we're going to see Ellie Vote use this as a launch pad back into the league, or do you think this is going to be his new home for a bit? Yeah. For sure. I definitely think that we could be seeing some more members of the Team Doge come back to come to Overwatch League for the first time. So it's definitely a good contenders team to keep your eye on if you want to know about the future of Overwatch League. And while we're talking about future of Overwatch League, we had a somewhat star player of the Overwatch League, uh, King Baby Bay, tweet out after their really disappointing loss to the Toronto Defiant. I'll go ahead and quote his tweet. It says, "GG's Toronto Defiant. This is more than likely my last tournament. Really wanted to win it all." So I don't know if maybe he's planning on retiring, moving into a coach at soon, or maybe at the end of the season, and he just doesn't believe that Atlanta's going to make final playoffs. But he has not made an official announcement of a retirement. So yeah, while he was definitely a pleasure to have on the team. They definitely are pretty stacked in the DPS role, so I don't know if this is going to hurt the team a ton, or I don't know. What do you think, Nero? Yeah, stacked. Yo, he would be so hyped to have on the desk. That would be pretty legit. I would really enjoy that. But to be fair, he's far from washed, so I don't think that he's going to be taking a role in like the desk or something like that. Um, I definitely think that there could be a possibility that he's going to Valorant, but at the same time, like it don't really matter. I'm gonna be somewhat of a fan no matter where he goes. I don't have a allegiance to any Valorant squads yet, so that might be a good way to pick a favorite team for me for real. But other than those two little bits of news, the league pretty much everybody's just been talking about the summer showdown because it was absolutely insane. This past weekend, we got to watch the summer showdown hosted in scenic Upset City because Jesus, that first day in especially on the North American side, was there a game that wasn't an upset? It was absolutely crazy. We got to see the Houston Outlaws beat up on the Florida Mayhem. We got to see Toronto Defiant make a pretty deep run, and the Justice got to surprise the Gladiators. So that was just the first day. So I'm gonna go ahead and break down like I was absolutely stoked to see Houston be able to top Florida, and I'm gonna go ahead. I wasn't that surprised. I was kind of expecting them to beat Florida with how confident the coaching staff had been that they could beat Florida after the week before they took them to a map 5. And for real, Houston looked really on point when they played Florida, and it wasn't a case of oh Florida was just bad. Houston's just getting to be a better team. Um, Anura, did you get to see that full game or seriously insane? Oh, for sure. Like that was so stoked on that. I'm really excited. Like that was one of the things in this past off season when Houston picked up Blase and Hydration, and then they already had Dante, they already had Linkser. We were talking about it, like what are they going to do with all these DPS players? But now we know because Hydration is really filled into that main tank role, and I think previously he had a quite a bit of experience on Wrecking Ball and Orisa, and he played a lot of Sigma. So he was only just like picking up the Reinhardt and the Monkey away from being like a pretty versatile main tank. So I'm really excited to see that he's finally like come to his own in that Houston squad, and I think that it definitely pushes them up in the power rankings. And I don't think that's not the bias talking. I think Houston legitimately after this past weekend beating Florida and then playing, we'll go ahead and talk about, they played Philly and they lost 3-0, but it was way closer than what a 3-0 looks like because there was a tie. It was 3-0 in four maps. And, Houston took like one of the control maps. They had a blistering attack time on, I believe it was Blizzard World. Like it was not just getting stomped by Philly. So Houston definitely looks like a scary team. If there's any other Overwatch League teams out there that haven't had their eye on Houston, they definitely can get surprised by how strong they are right now. But they weren't the biggest dark horse in the tournament. We got to see the Toronto Defiant, like I mentioned earlier. First, they upset LA Valiant on Friday, and then they played Atlanta Reign on Saturday and beat them too. So I don't know about you. I didn't think Toronto was. I would have never guessed they were going to get past the Valiant, more or less get past the Valiant and the Reign. So do you think this is Toronto coming in having a better plan? They're running the logics and agility, and maybe Surefour wasn't their best pick, and this is like their good look? Or do you think that this was just like the meta really hit where their specialists are? Mm-hmm.
They're looking really good. Agilities looks insane on the Genji. But I'm going to be honest, they kind of had an easy route to the top four. Um, Atlanta hasn't been the strongest as
I was muted. My bad. Now, what I was saying is that I don't think that Toronto Defiant going that deep was the biggest surprise. To me, the biggest surprise was the Gladiators losing to the Justice. Like, what the heck happened there, dude? That was a huge surprise for me. I thought that I was didn't think the Justice could really get past very many teams right now, and they show up and they beat the Gladiators. And this was one of those games that like I'd been watching Overwatch League for so many hours and was just like, there's so many games to watch in a day. I'm just gonna take a break and play some games. And I turned around and I'm like, holy crap, the Gladiators are losing, and I had to rush back and try to catch up. Yeah. So you don't think this was a surprise? Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Like the Justice have been kind of quiet for a while. Just not. They picked up John New and Stitch, and really they haven't done that much since they've been playing. Like, but maybe this was one of those things where it's been taken quite a while for the team to mesh together, landed with a little bit of a favorable meta, and then just gave that Justice just a little bit of a bump to be able to catch a couple wins this week. But yeah, to me that was just the last upset in a string of absolutely insane upsets in the North American region. Um, you want to go ahead and talk about finals or the beginning of the Asian Pacific showdown? Okay, so we were able to get together the finals came out actually since everybody had been thinking just like last the May like it's pretty much the same. We all kind of thought that the Shock and the Fusion were going to be the final two. But here comes Paris, and Sparkle's Genji is how would you say, absolutely cracked. His Genji is insane, and Paris was able to upset the San Francisco Shock, and then directly after that, same day, just like what was it, 15, 20 minutes later, was able to play the Philly Fusion. And the Philly Fusion was a first to four map, and they were able to pull that win off 4-3. And both of these series, they pretty much are just now classic Overwatch League games. Like they were absolutely insane. Some of us we were hanging out in Discord for a watch party during the Fusion versus the Paris Eternal, and we were just amazed at how fast this Sparkle was charging some of his Genji blades. And not to say EQO wasn't charging them fast sometimes. Like he kept pace a couple times, but the consistence on how fast that Sparkle was charging his Genji blades, and I think he was averaging nearly 2 kills a blade, which is just an absolutely insane stat. So this was the first tournament, like the first like little period segment of play since Sparkle's been of age and been in the Overwatch League, and their team wins it all. So I definitely have been a little bit critical of him, being like, how is he going to live up to that hype? And then we saw him the first week, and I was like, is he really gonna? Is he really that good? But after this past weekend, I don't think there is anyone that watched these games that wasn't just like, wow, Sparkle is top of the league, especially when it comes to the Genji. Um, I know you. Yeah, go for it. Go on. Let's go. Seriously. Yeah. Oh, for sure. And in the few moments that Sparkle wasn't just going insane, it was literally because XZ beat him to the kills. Like XZ had a really stellar game. We saw a little bit of innovation. Most of this meta we've been seeing like either a Genji or Tracer crossed with an Ashe or a Widow for the DPS lines. And we got to see XZ, I guess it seems like it might have been a little bit of a comfort pick, or maybe it was to shut down some of the blades. But he went on to the McCree, and high noon kills don't come too often in the Overwatch League. That's one of those ultimates that if you're gonna be pro at Overwatch, you're gonna learn how to not get killed by high noons unless you're trapped in a grab or something like that. So we actually got to see him pull off some pretty crazy high noon kills and just crazy raw revolver kills. And it's even crazy too that they have Soon on the bench who came in for Li Jiang and Nepal, and I believe it was on Nepal that he had a pretty insane tracer clutch come in. So while the we're sitting here talking about Sparkle, Paris Eternal still has XZ, who is a star DPS player in his own right, and Soon, who is absolutely incredible at the tracer. They brought him in to play some Reaper. They played a May Reaper comp for one of the controlled maps, and it's you don't really hear about Soon a whole lot, but it seems to me that he's still pretty far away from being washed. Like, dude's still legit, still compete. He was still able to compete with the Philly Fusion. So, yeah, like I might this past weekend might have made me a little bit too bullish on the Philly Fusion. Like, I think that they're a top three team now. Wouldn't you agree? Or is that too soon? Yeah, Paris Eternal. I said it wrong. I'm my bad. I think Paris is like a top three team right now, but that might be just because of this weekend. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we saw Shock beat the Justice 3-0, who's not really that strong of a team, and then we seen them lose to Paris. So that's the information that we have about the Shock. And they definitely are weak when it comes to a Genji player, and it seemed like they were opting to run the Tracer, which a lot of times in a head-to-head duel, Genji will can beat a Tracer, which so that they spent quite a bit of time playing Striker. So this kind of seems like it just seems like a little bit of gap in the San Francisco Shock's armor. We thought that they were the absolute best team for a minute, but they haven't pulled off any of these tournament wins. So these past two tournaments, I think that the Shock have been the favorite for both of them, and they ain't win either of them. Or wait, no, Shock did win last. Never mind. Don't listen to me. Shock was definitely favorite that this for the summer showdown, and they didn't win. And one of the things we already talked about is almost immediately after the Shock lost, they had a tweet go out that said that they are holding open tryouts and that the Shock is looking for new players. And it had like a list of requirements, and it was like must be top 500 the past few seasons or average SR 4.4K plus. And you know, I I don't know if that was something they planned and they were just like, oh, in this week, because next week we don't got games. Next weekend there's no games. So I was kind of thinking maybe it could be, um, it could be that. I just lost my train of thought, dude. Um, oh yeah. Okay, the tryouts. Okay, so I was thinking like, was the Shock really planning on hosting tryouts before? And that just so happens they lost, so they sent the tweet out, or if that was like an actual like we lost a game, we need new players. So I don't know. What is your take on that tryouts? I don't either. Yeah, I was. I'll be honest. Okay, I was a little bit disappointed when I seen that it was open tryouts 4400 SR plus because I instantly thought of. I don't know if you're a fan of Always Sunny, but there's an episode where the gang hears that they're holding open tryouts for the Philadelphia Eagles football team, and they're like, let's go try out just so we can run down the field with the Eagles. Like, it's worth it. Because as soon as I saw open tryouts, I was like, dude, I'm going to try out. I'll get dunked on by the Shock. Like, that would be so cool just to, like, experience. But then I seen 4,400, and I'm just like, oh, how am I gonna get like 3,000 SR fast? Like, it's a long way to the top, and I ain't got that kind of time. But I don't know. Do you think that they're gonna be like trying to pick somebody up like before the end of the year, or like maybe even in this little 2 week span they're gonna announce a pickup? Um, they do have 2 weeks. Yeah, I'm very curious about the idea of open tryouts for an Overwatch League team mid-season. Like to me, it seems like if they're seeing a hole in where they're like, they lost Sinatra, they lost Architect, we traded away Architect, and Sinatra quit. So in that time, like those were two players that were in the rotation. They did get playtime, so it definitely has left a void. And I guess that this Genji buff coming in and everyone wanting to play Genji has really exposed it to him. But what really makes me curious is the open tryouts thing, as opposed to like trying to trade within the league. Like, they have Super and they have Smurf. I know their specialties are a little bit different, but that could be a place that they could find a trade. I just don't see. it seems to me that they would be looking for other talent within the league. Like somebody that comes to mind instantly to me is the New York Excel. They have an excess of projectile, specifically really good Genjis. They've got Libero, Who Are You, and Hakusal. There's no way they're going to play all three of them in the same game. Like one of those dudes can get traded to the Shock, and then that would be legit a terrifying lineup. But the fact that they're going to pick up talent in open tryouts, we also have to look at some of the other players that have come from that kind of thing. Like Ons on their team now, they got him from open tryouts. The legend from season one, Jonak, was picked up off the ladder. Like there are players probably out there that could make a really good addition to the Shock that just aren't known, and that's pretty exciting. I'm just very curious if this is something that they're like holding tryouts, but really this to me it's like, could it also be like a negotiation tactic? Like they're trying to sign somebody else within the league, and they're like being like, oh, you want too much money, we'll just pick somebody up off the ladder for half that. And it's like, Steve, look, we're gonna do it, you're gonna take less. Like it could be like some kind of negotiation tactics, like because that's got to be, that kind of thing has to happen at some level. So yeah, this has been a pretty big head scratcher for me about the Shock looking for more players. True. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very anxious to see how that pans out, because it could get down to it and then they just decide like, oh, we're probably just better off how we are right now and keep the team as is. Like that's totally a possibility too. Um, but now we can go ahead and get into talking about the summer showdown over on the Asian side. Those early morning games, late night games, depending where you're at. Um, this was actually a pretty big surprise to me. Not most of the semifinals and knockout games, that wasn't the biggest surprise, but the finals where we got to see the Guangzhou charge right into the dungeon and slay the dragons. Nobody thought that the dragons wouldn't win this, and the charge, they showed up. They their first two games against the Chengdu Hunters, they went 3-0. Their next game against the New York Excelsior, they went 3-0. So overall, throughout this past weekend, the Guangzhou Charge's record was 10-2 when it comes to maps, and that's pretty stellar record. They came out looking really hot, because you're not going to take down the Shanghai Dragons without looking hot. Um, Other notable games, we got to see New York 3-0 the Spark on Saturday. That um, is a little bit of a rivalry. They've had some close games of late. And then we got to see the Seoul Dynasty beat the London Spitfire 3-1. But to me, the big story here is that the Dragons did not win. So, how many of these games did you get to watch? A bunch of them, or personally, I just kind of caught some of the later ones and got to see most of the finals. Um, some really good Overwatch. I'm just stunned Dragons didn't pull it out. Yeah, I got to watch it. You know how it is when you start watching something real early in the morning though. So it was like I woke up and not too long after waking up, I was like, let's watch some Charge and Dragons. So for sure, for sure. I mean, we've seen the Charge go on streaks before where they coming out pretty strong. I think the end of last year they went on a pretty big streak in that wild card tournament to make it in. So Charge definitely got the capability, got some pretty high capabilities, and this game kind of makes me think. Do you think Lip has like the pretty strong shot caller leadership role when it comes to the Dragons? Because, like you were saying, when Lip was in, they played quite a bit better than when his counterpart DM was playing. With they did play Lip DM together in that first map, but from then on, they would kind of just traded them out with Fleta as the other person playing DPS. So to me, that kind of makes me curious if Lip has better shot calling, is more vocal, or is DM, does he have calls that are a liability to the team, where like his aim and his mechanics are on point? Because something went wrong with the Dragons because they have been at the top of the Asian region for just so long. It's just really surprising to me that they were able to drop the game against the Charge. So yeah, this was the only other team that I could have seen making it to the finals would have been the New York XL. Like, I think they're still a legit team, and I think that this kind of has just cemented the top three in my mind to be in the Asian region. The top three to be Dragons, Charge, New York. I know that New York, they've kind of dropped some games lately, and then they lost to the Charge, but Charge are legit. So I definitely think that New York definitely belongs towards the top of the power rankings. Did you catch any of these other games that came on during the summer showdown for the Asian regions that you thought were pretty hype, worth talking about? Yeah, and I also don't think that Nero was on the bench because he was bad. I think it's just a purely meta decision. I think that the charge can be equally as strong with Nero playing, but maybe not in this meta. Maybe we'll see him come out. Go ahead. Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. For sure, for sure. But I'm just saying that while this is who's best for this meta, I don't think that that's saying that Nero won't be the best choice in a future meta with different bands or different balance. Like I definitely think Nero will be getting playtime again this year. It's just this team we had was pretty hot. So now in lieu of we have no games to be going over for next week because it's a gap week. We got next week off. Then when the week after, then when games resume, it is good to note that the games are going to be starting. I'm going to look at the number real quick, but there's Friday games when games start back. So that is definitely something to be aware of. We're going to have, I guess it will be starting on I think it's the 17th. Yeah, games resume on the 17th. So we're going to save, our preview of the games 2 weeks from now for next week. But when they do come back, they'll be on a Friday. But since we don't really have games to preview for next week, we can just kind of dive deeper into this summer showdown. Um, and we can just go ahead and pick some MVPs. Who do you think is going to be? Let's go. Do you want to start North American and then go to the Asian Pacific with the summer showdown? Um, we got to pick some MVPs. And how about let's make this interesting? We pick MVPs for the North American region and leave out Sparkle because it's almost for sure that he would get it. That's pretty unanimous. I guess you're right. Well, I'm just saying that's pretty unanimous, so like we'll go for a second place. But yeah, I definitely think in the North American region that Sparkle had an absolutely insane performance. But we talked about him all game or all night pretty much. So let's highlight some other players from this summer showdown that you think performed exceptionally. Yup. Okay, so I definitely think looking at Paris, Hanbin had a pretty great game. All of Paris had to have great games to win it all, but Hanbin was able to set up to enable his team with his accretion, the Yeet Rock. He was able to use that rock to just set up just fight winning plays for the rest of his team and was just cleaning up fights, which is really able to sustain and help keep the damage going in. Like I think Hanbin definitely flexed on Sigma at times throughout the tournament. But if we're gonna look at players outside of the Paris Eternal, you you got to look at Choi Obin. Even though San Francisco lost to Paris Eternal, that was by no means could have fallen down on Choi Obin. He had a pretty dang good game, and his rocks. To when I watched, I didn't see them. He was setting himself up and setting up the the rocks, but it was more of the Holt than the rock. Like the Holt was setting up the rock, whereas it seemed to me that Paris, while they everyone tries to do the Holt rock in 2020, but it seemed like their rocks were more to set up the team, as in as opposed to a follow up from the Holt. But I definitely think that we seen Choi Oben is on the top of the leaderboard when it comes to sigmas. I don't know if in a head to head if we had to argue Choi Oben versus Hanmin, who would be the better sigma. They're both top top five sigmas in the world. So that was absolutely great to watch, and that's one of those things I'm trying to take notes on. I'm trying to get my sigma play a little bit better. But when it comes to DPS, we definitely got to see Tuba. I gotta tell you gotta mention him because they were one of those teams that you never saw winning, and he just popped off and helped them win. So that's a couple of those couple players that I think definitely deserve some recognition, deserve quite a bit of recognition for their performances in the summer showdown. Um, yeah, it seems kind of weird. We don't got games coming up next week. Usually, our meat of the show is okay. Next week, let's talk about what we got coming up. And right now, no games next week. I mean, I'm probably gonna take a break from watching Overwatch this weekend and watch some UFC. Um, but in regards to some Overwatch League, you got anything you're looking forward to in the coming week? Oh, yeah, you're right. I goofed. I goofed. Oh, for sure. I definitely think that it's hard to argue for anyone other than Eileen, just because of how clean the Charges games were. They didn't drop a map until they came up against the Dragons, and honestly, I don't know if there's any combination of players in the world that could like absolutely sweep the Dragons right now. That might be kind of high to say, but they really are they can compete with literally anybody. So to drop maps to them ain't a big deal. But seeing the Charge just go undefeated, and yeah, seeing Eileen on the Genji, he's just so good. He's good in a different way than Sparkle. Yeah, he charges his blades fast and does, but he kind of has kills and I'm brain farting kills. He gets kills in the neutral like without the blade, and that's a it's pretty big for a Genji to do because in in the past, Genji has just kind of been a blade bot. You play Genji, you charge blade, you ask your Ana for nano, chop them up. But with this in this newest patch, the buff was to his shurikens and then to make his deflect better. So it's enabling Genjis to like go out there and really just play bloodthirsty instead of just being the blade bot instead of just trying to like take an angle, right click in, get as much charge as you can. It really gives them like different opportunities to really be assassins, like the ninja that Genji is like portrayed as. And that's a pretty interesting because in the past, you think of Genji as the blade bot, and then you would think of like a Tracer or a Doomfist to be the ones that would be like looking for the crazy picks in the back line and going on hard flanks. But really, now with this new patch, that's definitely something that Genji can do as well. So, um, I guess one thing you think that after seeing how much Genji owned throughout this tournaments, you think they're looking at him for a possible nerf, or you think that that's just like this is what the pros can do. Normal people can't do that. You can't balance around the pros because they're going to be able to do what normal people can't do. So I don't know. You think that Genji's strength is at risk after seeing how these teams popped off on him? Same. True. Oh yeah, that yeah. I mean, that's definitely one way to look at it. I definitely foresee the to be getting. They didn't do the put the bands out already, and I missed it. Right. Um, okay. Yeah. Good. So I would be very surprised if we don't see Genji getting banned just because of how high he was, the high percentage of his playtime. But since it is kind of on a random draw, so it could, in theory, he could have the most likelihood to be banned, but then not get banned. So we could see a couple more weeks of Genji, but um, yeah, I don't know. I definitely think that's gonna be quick on the ban list, and I think that's gonna Genji getting banned is just gonna revert it back to the long range hit scan plus tracer. That I think it's gonna go to that kind of comp if it's a Widow or an Ash, whoever isn't on the chopping block of the ban. Like I definitely foresee that it's pot. Like I think the highest percentage played heroes. See, this kind of burns us because the stats lab comes out on Tuesdays. We're recording this on a Monday night, so we can't look at the exact stats for these past 2 weeks. But we definitely can just tell by what we watched that Orisa had a huge amount of playtime. There was a ton of Orisa, a ton of Sigma. Some teams did Orisa with Reinhardt. So I definitely think we'll have to clarify on this next week because we'll have the stats. But I think most played would probably be like Orisa and then the Genji, and then for supports either Bap or Brig. I think Baptiste and Brig, just about every team ran Bap Brig in some capacity for some of the tournament. Like some of the control maps, you use a Lucio, but it was pretty much Baptiste and Brig. So and you just mention we had the Brig ban is on or the Brig nerf, not a ban, is on live. So when these games resume, there will be no more of the overheal armor pack. So we'll see how much that shakes up the meta because that's less. I don't want to say this wrong, but that's less of a nerf to Brig and more of a nerf to the Tracers, the Genjis. You know, that those kind of players, the Echo, that kind of thing. It's more of a nerf to them than the Brig. So yeah, we'll just have to see how this goes over the next couple. 2 weeks from now when we finally get more Overwatch games. Yeah, it's. You got any more closing statements about the summer showdown? Yep. Yeah, I definitely think, I hope that the success of these tournaments pushes them into, like in the past years when they had the four stages a year. Like that definitely was just awesome. Um, but yeah, so we had pretty kind of a light show tonight since there wasn't any games to preview for the next week. Um, last thing I do want to talk about is we've been doing it's for a couple weeks now. We've been having watch parties for Overwatch League games, and this weekend we did one for the finals with Paris and Philly, and it was had like a pretty good turnout compared to the past two we've done. So that was absolutely great, and that's going to be something that I'm going to look to be doing moving forward. I know Anura works weekends more than I do, so when I can make it happen, we're gonna make it happen. I'm gonna try to schedule one. You know, there's no watch parties this weekend because there's no games. Might do one for UFC, but I'm gonna try to go ahead and have watch parties going forward, just once a weekend. I want to go ahead and just give a shout out to the people that showed up. It was Owl and Kasha and Phony and Captain Bakara and Gluteus for, and for hanging out. It was a blast. If you've thought about coming to some of the one of the watch parties, I really encourage you to do it moving forward, because it's just about having fun. That's all it is. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and kind of close out this show. If you would like to leave a review for the show, go ahead and head on over to your favorite podcatcher and leave us a review. We're always looking at ways to improve, how to make a better show. So leave us a review and we'll go ahead and read it on the air and when we get them. Anura, you want to tell everybody about Overwatch Recall? If you would like to send an email to the show, you can send an email to contact@owlnshow.com. We have a website, and it is owlnshow.com. You can find up to date news on when we're going live on Twitter at OWLN Show. You can find past replays of all episodes so far of the Overwatch League Network on our YouTube at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. We have a Discord, which is great for hanging out, discussing games, watch parties, and um, maybe even more coming moving forward. And that is discord.me/OWLN show. Uh, all of our shows are aired live on twitch.tv/OWLN show. And we are a Twitch affiliate, so you can help support the show by subscribing to the channel, and you get to earn the network emoticon. And since we're a podcast network, we stream regularly with multiple different shows, hosted by a variety of hosts. So if you want to check out any of the other shows on the network, we've got this show that's Overwatch League Network that airs Mondays at 6 p.m. PT. Then we have Overwatch League by the Numbers, which airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. PT. And then we have Heroes Never Die, a variety Overwatch show, which airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. PT. And then there's Tavern Tales. It's a Hearthstone Battlegrounds podcast that airs Thursdays at 5 p.m. PT, but that one is at twitch.tv/Tavern Tales HS. And if you want to contact me personally, you can hit me up at on Twitter at boogerbrains with two Z's, BOOGERBRAINZZ. And Anura, you want to let people know how to get a hold of you? Yeah, and I think that's pretty much wraps up our episode. We hope everybody listening has a absolutely great week. Hope you all win all your comp games, and you know, just have a great weekend.